And then we're ready to go. All right. So, first of all, thank you for joining us. For those of you who do not know me, I'm Crystal Button. I am an instructional designer here at DBC, and I work with our just digital equity distance education team, and I also teach here part-time off and on. And Ray Clapper is here somewhere, but she went into another room, so I will tap dance for her while she comes back. There she is. There she is. Okay, Ray, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, sorry everybody, I was just getting a sign in for those in person. I am Rachel Ray Clapper. I'm your digital equity and distance education coordinator. You get a lot of emails from me. Yay! Yeah. Crystal and I are here to talk to you about engaging students through RSI. It's kind of a foundational engagement. The RSI we have planned for tomorrow digs deeper into templates and into like practical things you can institute right away, so they kind of build on each other. So we will move on. Here is our agenda where we did the welcome and introductions. Hi. We're just going to do a quick reminder of RSI policy, but also kind of digging a little deeper into mapping. We have some interaction examples, a little bit of sharing, although we might have to skip over that just because time. And then we're going to talk about sentence frames. We'll have a little bit of time for AMA, ask us anything, some resources, and then bye. So let's do this. Okay. Oh, sorry about that, Crystal. I just kind of jumped into it. So what is RSI? Regular and substantive interaction in distance education courses, online, hybrid, high flex. I would like to take a moment here to say that though we are focusing on distance education courses, RSI is necessary in in-person classes as well. The focus is on the distance education right now. So it requires that instructors provide consistent, regular, scheduled, and planned feedback and interaction with their students. According to our 4CD board policy 4014, this includes providing instruction, direct instruction. That would be for synchronous, hybrid, and high flex only. So if you have an online asynchronous, number 1 doesn't apply to you. Assessing or providing feedback on a student's coursework, providing information or responding to questions about the content of a course or competency, facilitating a group discussion regarding the content of a course or competency, or additionally approved activities. Spoiler, there are none. So for online asynchronous courses, you have to do 2 of 2, 3, or 4 weekly. That would be regular. So we want to kind of dig into that. And I do want to say, if you have questions, please make a note and ask at the end so we can get through the content because we only have 50 minutes. So what does that actually mean? So regular and substantive interaction looks like this. So these are actual screenshots from some of our peer online course reviewed courses, which means these courses went through like a whole year-long process of aligning to this rubric that was approved statewide, and they are best examples of what RSI can be and should be. So you'll see there's announcements, there's group or peer-to-peer work, gradebook comments, discussions. These are all examples of things that you can do and are probably already doing, to be honest. But we can make these great examples of RSI. You are regularly contacting students. Students are regularly working with other students. And we can look like in this discussion board here, you have the opportunity for students to engage from their own perspective, but then they're also engaging with other students clearly
with examples, peer replies, very clear language as to what they're expected to do. This is part of that RSI, being transparent, being clear, and making sure students know what your expectations are so they can meet them. This is a great example of a gradebook comment. While it does look a little bit long, and do know that it's coming from an English professor, so perhaps that's part of that, but it details not only like a good job comment, but also, hey, here's what I noticed, and maybe try this or do this thing. Giving the student a little bit of praise, a bit of a direction to go in to make sure that they can meet the requirements either for the next assignment or that they maybe missed in this one or things like that. We'll talk a little bit more in depth about group or peer-to-peer work. There's a lot of great ways to make that happen in person, hybrid, asynchronous, synchronous. And Ray and I have a lot of templates that we're always happy to share. The one thing we like to call out, which we will call out several times, is don't forget to use the message students who feature in the gradebook. Canvas itself in the gradebook has a feature called message students who, where you can select students who maybe scored above a certain grade, below a certain grade, forgot to turn it in, or maybe turned it in late or whatever. You can select the type of student that falls into the category and then send them a message. It appears like an individual message, which is the best part, but you are not spending time individually messaging all these students, which is great for us. So if you went to many of our other previous sessions, you've probably seen this slide before. I won't spend a lot of time on it. It's from my class because I like to just throw myself under the bus regularly. But when we're mapping for RSI, we're looking for specific purposeful interaction. There are those moments in our courses, and I invite you to open up your own if you're looking at Canvas and you want to. There are moments in our courses where like interaction accidentally happens. It's a happy accident. We like it. It's great. And it goes well. But there are also moments that should be planned and intentional where you are also participating and providing feedback. So this is sort of an outline of a module. And you can see like intentional moments are built in here, but there's also unintentional moments. I have a studio video where students are allowed to comment back and forth, ask informal questions. It's optional. In that live synchronous meeting, they're meeting in small groups and I am there just giving them informal guidance and feedback. So it's purposeful for the student to student, but maybe it's not so purposeful for me. I'm not planning what I'm doing, but I'm there. I'm part of the feedback. However, I do have some feedback on assignments that I'm providing here that is very specific, purposeful, and intentional. And then student interaction. Student-to-student interaction is a discussion board. I know discussion boards exist. Sometimes they're fatiguing, but they're a great way to get students to interact with other students.
One thing I want to highlight about this is that you'll notice that Crystal called out, particularly with the discussion board, not only is it student-to-student interaction, but it's also instructor feedback. And remember, with instructor feedback, that doesn't mean you have to give every student feedback on every discussion. Sometimes that feedback can be to the entire class as a wrap-up post on the discussion, or in the next week's studio video or introduction. The second thing I want to say is, sorry,
You have to hang it up.
the second thing I want to say is district is currently working on a training, what do we call that? Self-paced RSI training, where you will kind of reflect and assess your own class for RSI, which will naturally integrate mapping in this way. And you'll get units for the pay scale. Woo, woo.
Okay, and one other thing, just to kind of go back to what Ray was saying about adding thoughts to the discussion. Don't feel like you have to participate in every single discussion board. Release yourself of that right now.
Yes.
You don't have to, because there does get to a point in the semester where I do not have the brain power to like participate as actively as I want to. And I have to let my students go and be the experts for a little bit. Of course, I can jump in when I see conversations maybe going in a direction that I don't need them to go in. But I have to release a little bit of control and know that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing and they're interacting with their peers. They know that I'm there because I've already set the precedent previously of being there. So I don't need to put my 2 cents into everything.
Yeah.
So here's just a quick list that you can take a look at to see if any of these hit home with you. But I mean, there's so many other ways that you can interact with students. What we like to remind folks is that that interaction should be happening through Canvas, because for equitable purposes, every student has access to Canvas. Not every student has access to other apps or other spaces. Plus, a lot of them are not safe for student information. So we really like to see that happening through Canvas to ensure that everybody has access and their information is safe in there.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
Also remember that Canvas has a lot of integrated functions like Lucid Whiteboard, Hypothesis, and it can all still stay within Canvas. So you don't have to just rely on the Canvas tools. We have external tools that are integrated that are great sources of interaction and feedback. Okay, so we wanted to provide some kind of quick templates or examples. And also tomorrow, we're gonna dig deeper into these examples. It's again, from 10 to 10:50. So come back for more juicy samples. This is a class community assignment, which means it's a community building. This particular class community building assignment is a reflection assignment about a previous essay in this case. So it's a community building about the course content, but it's also important to have those class community building assignments that are just them as human beings, which we'll talk to a little bit more. So here again, as Chrysla outlined, the directions are very clear, about 200 words, specifically what they need to be answering. And then acknowledging that the instructor will provide feedback to each student in the comments. So this is just a way to build that interaction and feedback. And just being transparent with the students about how you will be providing feedback. Another way to fulfill those three is having a weekly ask me anything or ask your questions, get your answers. That is ungraded, but it's an opportunity for students to ask questions specific to that week. You could also do it as a semester Q&A that you just put in every week's module to remind them. And it just kind of gives students the opportunity as they're working through the module to post their question to you real quickly and then move on. So those were just a couple of like interaction built within Canvas, but we wanted to talk about feedback because this is the part that is demanding on us as instructors. And so we wanted to talk about how to manage the work.
Yeah, so I mean, I think we've acknowledged that it's a lot of work, and if you've participated at all in any sort of grading, you know that feedback is a lot of work. So what I offer you is sort of a list of my best practices around providing feedback and when to access feedback or how to access it. Plan it. Be very specific about what assignments get this much feedback and what assignments get this much feedback. Of course, we want to give more than like a good job, but being constructive can sometimes take a really long time per assignment per student. And especially if you're teaching a full load, it really starts to add up. So think about how extensive you want that feedback to be, and then create editable templates. I myself use a Google Doc that I have like feedback starters on, because it's generally every semester the same comments are for the same assignments over and over and over again. Of course, I like splice in specific things for that student, but the beginning is the same, the end is the same. I also have a comment that I saved that's like explains how to get students to the academic support center or the student centers for help. So that way I don't have to type it fresh every time. I just copy and paste it because that link hasn't changed. For our tech resource hub, same kind of things. So I have all of those pre-prepared. And then that way I can copy and paste those and save time on my part. And of course, the message students do, which we've already talked about. And I see there's a question in the chat, do rubric comments count? Yes. But we're just trying to give you time saving, so like. Likely if you're building in the Canvas rubric, you can't save your comment and like copy and paste it. So that's why I do the Google Doc. Because even though I do use a rubric, I always create a rubric. If you know anything about me, is that I love rubrics, and I will harp on rubrics until the cows come home. They really do also save you time, but I can't save my comments in the rubric and then like reuse them. So I do have that Google Doc, and then I copy and paste them into the rubric. But the rubric itself, like we built a rubric, is not feedback, that's guidance. So that students are transparent in what they're trying to achieve in your course, but that's not provided feedback from an instructor after they've submitted an assignment.
I will second everything Crystal said. I also have a Google Doc with my templates that I do personalize for each individual student with resources and whatnot. And I do use a rubric and in the exact same way. Not saying that's how you have to do it, but just letting you know, we both do that.
So as I mentioned, great job or not completed or try again, those kinds of comments are like, I find that I wanna do things like that when I get super busy and I just don't feel like I have the time to comment as thoroughly as I want to. But I have to remind myself that the purpose of feedback is for the student, it's not necessarily for me. I wanna guide them to mastery for the next assignment, even if they can't resubmit this one, I still want them to know what they can do better for next time. So I am still gonna give them something, it may not be as much or as in-depth as I can, especially it depends on what time in the semester it is. But I'm gonna give them something that at least pushes them forward. So of course, praise and feedback, but then also maybe areas for growth and then resources. Those are my copy and pasted things. The praise and recognition is usually a copy and paste, the resources is usually a copy and paste, and then that areas of growth is what I put in there myself. Of course, like sometimes, like I mentioned, I don't always have time to participate in the discussion boards, and sometimes that's where I'll be like, wow, what a great thought. Have you ever read this resource? It's not the best comment in my life, but it's all I can produce at the moment, and I've provided them a resource to think further, and that's better than just saying that was a great comment. So some thoughts as to when and how you can provide those pieces of feedback. We like to call regular weekly. I mean, there's no like timestamp on it, but weekly feels best, especially because you want your students to know you're there in class. If you're teaching online or hybrid, you want them to know you're available. So, excuse me, weekly feels better. Bi-weekly, if that's all you got, but think about announcements. Students love to see weekly announcements. I do 2 to 3 announcements per week. Plus I have like a lot of videos and stuff throughout the module, so students know that I'm present, even though I'm not constantly commenting on everything or posting all the time. They should be regularly getting feedback so that they know you're there, but also so that they know what their progress is before it's too late. We want to make sure that they have a transparent pathway to success. So how can you do this? You can reply to students in a discussion, you can reply to them in the gradebook comments, or you could do as Ray suggested, like a whole post, like announcement after the discussion, kind of summarizing your thoughts. An end note in assignments, you have the ability to do that in the gradebook. You could also annotate in assignments depending on if you're like grading and turn it in or something like that. A weekly announcement, I prefer to do an announcement video because it's just faster for me. But sometimes when I really get overwhelmed, I'll copy and paste an announcement from our previous semester, change the dates and call it a day, and just post that, because that's all that I have, but I want my students to know that I'm there. And then of course, again, that's what students do.
Are you kidding?
I know, that's a really good way to appeal individually to a lot of students without a lot of time commitment.
Do we have time? A little bit, so let's.
We may have to cut it short, but.
Okay, no, okay. So I just love this ridiculous gif of the skeleton, just like it's done. I just love it. We wanted to take a minute and allow you to share other ways you give feedback, if there are ways you give feedback that we didn't acknowledge, or if you had questions about interaction or feedback. No, let's hold on to questions. let's just do, any other ways you give feedback? So if you're online, please feel free to put it in the chat. If you're here, you can just kind of say it. Also, if you're online and you want to unmute, we'd be happy to hear that. Any other ways?
I think they covered it. I mean, I use in the comment section, in
Uh-huh.
practice, I'll do an audio or a video, and I love screen sharing a video, like something they've written and, move my cursor and explain so that you're looking at it at the same time.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, we didn't talk much about that. It looks like in the comments, Jay says sometimes media comments are best, so kind of seconding that. Audio comments very similarly. For synchronous and asynchronous, midweek and end of week reminders about assignments due, that's great.
I just want to jump in really quick and also comment on when we're doing those audio comments and things like that, ensuring accessibility. Because we can't assume that all students can hear our audio comments, so it's really important to include transcripts or a text write-up to go with that, so that it's equitable for all students.
Yeah. Could you go over feedback during in-person group activities? I teach intro to chem. Is that in a synchronous or a hybrid course? I can't see who it is.
In person.
In person?
But maybe can we pause on that if we're gonna hold questions?
Yeah.
We're gonna show you some examples of group activities. So that might help a little bit, and then if you still have a question, we can follow up.
Yeah. Great. Okay, thank you all. We just wanted to give you a break from our voices and hear from your voices. So do you have to do this for each and every activity? No, but yes. No, you don't have to give feedback on each and every activity, but you do need to be giving feedback and making sure students are interacting every week.
Yeah, so what we have here are just some examples of things that we like to do, when we provide feedback, and I find like a routine gives me a little bit more clarity, and so that I don't get lost in my own words. So I always use I noticed, I wonder as like something that rings in my head of like, this is what I'm writing. So I noticed this, and then I wonder if you've ever thought about this. That's really my frame. I use it for just about anything. In fact, if I work one-on-one with you, I will likely say it at some point, because it's my way of breaking the ice and also being respectfully intrusive when I notice something that maybe is not the best way to get to the end game of whatever your focus is. So I'll do that with my students, and then that way it puts the thought process on them. I'm releasing a little bit of that responsibility, and I am asking them to be the expert in their own learning, and I'm providing feedback. I'm not telling them, nope, you did it wrong, and here's exactly how you're gonna fix it. I'm gonna see what their thought process is first before I add my own thoughts. There's also the tag method, which is tell something you liked, ask for answer a question, and then give positive feedback. It's a feedback sandwich.
Yeah.
If you've ever heard the phrase like a compliment sandwich, feedback sandwich, it's very similar. So something great, something maybe that you have some questions about, and then something great again for that bottom line. But if it helps my brain to think about just a quick, I noticed, I wonder, and then I'm done with my feedback, and then I can follow up more detail later if I need to.
And I use the tag method pretty dominantly. And I just want to point out, like, asking a question could be providing resources. It could be like I noticed that you're struggling with commas. I teach English. Here's a really great resource to reference. So I think that's just so you know. I do use I noticed and I wonder sometimes too. We wanted to provide some frames for you, so you have access to these slides. Feel free. So the first one, I love that you insert specific elements and that you'll be able to check out the modules anytime to refresh. To answer your question, insert question and answer. I'm excited to see how you use these tools. As always, if I can help, reach out. Thanks for being a good student. You have some really great ideas here, but they need development. I see you struggled with blank. But I also see that in the assignment, you did that really well, blank, whatever it is. However, if you're struggling, here's a resource that can help. I think this will help because blank, so pay special attention to that. Also take advantage of the tutoring options on campus and through NetTutor. You know, as always, if I can help, reach out, you're on the right track to success, keep it up. And so even if you use that frame for every student, you are specifying the areas they struggled with, acknowledging what they did really well, giving them a resource, telling them why that resource could help. So it becomes individualized in that way. And then the last one, you're doing a good job in this course. Insert specifics to what that means for the assignment. With a little bit of attention to blank, you will master the material and be able to apply it to other courses. So like showing the students how this thing you're learning in your course applies to other things they'll be doing throughout their education. Here's a resource on blank to help you grow even further. So like leveling them up. Keep rocking it or whatever. Yeah. Okay, so we have time for questions. So if we are all using these frames for every student, isn't this going to look can? I mean, it depends, Carrie. I think the bigger thing that we wanted to do is show you some ways that we frame. And these came from people in POMP, our peer online mentorship program. So that you could think, okay, how does this relate to my class and what is the thing that I need to do and what's the way I need to frame it? So think of them more as templates that then you adapt to your specific discipline.
I mean, and you're gonna add your own spice to it.
Yeah.
I think we're definitely not asking you to regurgitate every word per word. And even though I use frames, they're different every time I use them because some students need this part and not that part. It's definitely not, I'm pasting the exact same thing for every single student, because that's not serving any purpose and that is not RSI. That is just me copying and pasting. But it does release the load or the burden on me to have to continuously type the same, hey, have you ever heard of the Academic Support Center? Here's how you can find it, and here are the questions I think you should take there. Because although it's a short sentence, to type that 20 times hurts my fingers and my brain, and I don't want to do that. So I use these for that purpose on my end, but I still put my own spice into every comment. I'm you know, joking with my students. I'm saying, oh, I remember when you commented on this last week. I see that you brought it back. Thanks for connecting the loop or whatever. There's a lot of individualism that I don't put in my frames because it is individual to each student.
That's something,
Of
so
course.
probably do it a lot more canonical, but it's not as visualized as you're saying. So for something that's, I want to repeat to all 45 people, I'll send out like a blanket announcement.
Yeah.
With the generality of how people did it, but very general, where they can get help or kind of this. And
Absolutely.
then I'll write to you individually on things that I might want to point out. And
Absolutely.
so all I'm writing is 1 or 2 sentences, because they got the whole spiel earlier in this announcement that's.
And you can, that is something that also I do, it depends on the type of assignment, but a friend of mine, when I used to work in Woodland, called that weeds and roses. And so she would type up like all the weeds, here are all the weeds that we all went through, so that I'm not individually pointing at you and you for doing these things, right? The weeds comment and then the roses come to you individually.
Oh, see.
Yeah, that's a perfect marriage of feedback in using different tools. I do that all the time, where the announcement is like, hey, on this assignment, here's what I noticed and here's what I want you all to think about. Here are these resources. And then that transparency of, but you're also going to get specific comments about your individual work beyond this. And that transparency is so important on how you're going to be getting feedback generally and then more specifically week by week. Great example. Any other questions about interaction and or feedback?
For example,
Or examples? Yes.
Yeah, go ahead. So I don't like using the annotating tools in Canvas for writing. And so I use my iPad to write.
Mhm.
It was more personal, but is there maybe some sort of aspect of the annotating tools that in Canvas that I'm missing by doing that, do you think?
I mean, I use the annotating tools just because it's all right there in Canvas.
Right.
Are you missing something? I don't.
I mean, I open the Canvas app on my
Yeah.
iPad, open the thing, and
I
it's
think
right.
my first thought is accessibility.
Yeah,
So if you have, and students don't have to disclose disabilities, and I know you're teaching ESL and there's a lot of cross-listed students, so you have a lot of disability DSS students in ESL courses and vice versa. If they're using a screen reader or any sort of technology to try to access that, it's likely not gonna read your comments at all.
Okay.
So that's something like that you, me and Ray can kind of work on and figure out like, what is the best system? Because there are things that can then take that writing and turn it into text. So that is readable or hearable if they're listening to it, through an audio device. Yeah.
but missing in terms of like the Canvas tools.
Yeah.
I mean, once you figure out the Canvas tools, it's pretty easy to use, but also, like, I don't wanna tell people how to grade, you know, except for the
If you're
accessibility.
talking about grading like essays and stuff that way too, turn it in is a really good answer to that, like a virtual answer, because you can actually do comments and turn it into. If you don't want to do them in SpeedGrader, because the functionality is just a little bit different, it's the same type of technology, but the functionality is a little bit different. I used to use Turnitin all the time, because I could copy and paste and then add my own thoughts. So I gave up the grading by hand for that reason, because it saves me time. And then I'm able to give more dedicated detailed feedback, because I don't have to do it all by hand.
And I believe in Turnitin, you can save comments
That's why I loved
too,
it.
like annotated comments, so teaching ESL English, it's gonna be underdeveloped, it's gonna need more
Yeah.
analysis, there's definitely gonna be language, word choice, specifically comma issues. So you can kind of save those and then add individuals specific to that student as you're grading. So Turnitin might be worth looking at.
So you have the Google Doc with your comments, but then in Turnitin, you also have a set of.
So I don't use Turnitin now,
Oh, I
because of the classes that I teach, I'm teaching mostly technology-based classes, so I don't use Turnitin for that stuff, so that's what my Google Doc is for. Or like when I'm doing all the professional development classes, I don't use Turnitin for that. But yes, if I was still grading essays, that's likely what I would be doing, because I saved all my comments and I turn it in, and then I can just boop, put these comments in, and then add my own fresh comments or links and stuff like that.
I also don't use Turnitin, I just use SpeedGrader just to keep it all within
Yeah.
Canvas. It did take me a little bit to kind of learn SpeedGrader.
And I think this is an opportunity, especially because I'll plug our 11 a.m. session with me and Lenore about accessibility. It's a good opportunity to rethink what we do for accessibility purposes, because some of the stuff that we do that, like, I love to make colorful, engaging, like, all kinds of animated presentations, but that's not super accessible. That doesn't mean I'm gonna stop. That means I'm gonna provide another resource that is equal access, not different access. Equal access, so students can access it in 2 different ways. So I still have my shiny pretty newsletter that goes to all of your inboxes, but you'll notice that underneath that, there's also a plain text version. I'm not gonna dull my own shine, but I am also gonna provide the exact same resource in a accessible format. We have 10 minutes left, we wanna get to the rest. So-
Yeah, if you have other questions, please reach out to Priscilla or I and
Yes.
we'll show you how to do that. So we have some resources.
So I'll speed through the resources, so I can show you that group example as promised, because I forgot it's not in this presentation, it's in our presentation for tomorrow. So,
Yeah.
we have two RSI presentations. So if you are new or maybe new-ish to online teaching here, we have something called the Canvas service request. So that form is for, more advanced Canvas needs. It's not necessarily for like basic Canvas help. But if you have a need for a sandbox, like you're teaching a brand new course and you've never taught it before and you don't want to make a mess of the live course, you need a sandbox, that's what it's for. Canvas's advanced requests, like if something really went wonky and like everything went dark and you need help immediately, that's what that's for. And then textbook integrations. If you're using a virtual textbook, you are going to need to use that to help the integration go forward. We also have in our tech resource hub the Canvas support module that has all of the basic how-tos and also your end of semester guidance. So as you start to wrap up, I know it's hard to think about that already, it hasn't even started yet, but it's got all of the stuff from beginning to end that you need. And I lied, it's not 2.5 hours of flex credit anymore, we bumped it to 4 this year. So you get 4 hours of flex credit for just taking this course. It's also not called the beginner's guide, I forgot to change that.
Yeah, I
We
didn't just
changed
that
it
either.
to, the Campus Essentials, Summer of Change. And you can chat with Canvas. The 24/7 chat, it goes all day long, all the times, all the places. And then you can always reach out directly to our Canvas admin, Ms. Kapora, for help as well. Like,
Yeah, so
to do that. The next slide. You can go over there, sure, I know. That's what I do. We're planning people. All right, so the course design hub is something that is faculty only. We do have resources for everybody, but this one is particularly for faculty only. And in here, you're gonna see all of the DE policies. So what you are required to do, teaching online or hybrid, also all of our contact information. Any of our guidance documents are going to be in here. So like yesterday, there was a lot of conversation around AI guidance, and also this morning at the AI one, you're going to find that document in here. Camera optional recommendation, our online proctoring recommendations, all of that is in here. But it also goes in detail about RSI and what RSI is, because it is something that you are required to do as an online teacher, as well as information about BEOI, which is our required training for Article 27 in the UF contract for teaching online. After all of the policies and procedures, then we have all of our templates, which you are more than welcome to download and import into your course and use. And we highly recommend that you do, because not only are they fully accessible, they're also pretty darn cute. So there's a whole orientation module done for you. All you have to do is go in and replace the highlighting stuff with your own thoughts, and that's it. And eventually these are going to get even better and even shinier, because we do have a new design program that we just got like a month ago, and we haven't had time to digest how to use it yet, but that is coming shortly. But that's where all of our templates are. You are welcome to import them into your course through Canvas Commons. If you've never used Canvas Commons, you're going to find it on that left side navigation, that it's like a C with an arrow coming out of it. That's Canvas Commons. You just search for DVC distance education and all of them will pop up. As promised, they will get better as we I think they're pretty great now, but they will get even better as we implement this new design thing that we have. But that will probably be like mid-semester, so it's going to be a spring thing. But we like to remind you to import templates new, fresh from Commons anyways, because there's always updates. I won't go into too much detail on these since we had our welcome letter lunch yesterday, but we do have our syllabus and welcome letter templates, which have been updated as of this month. So there's lots of new links and less text. So they're pretty great resources. You're welcome to use these. If you haven't yet sent out your welcome letter, absolutely use our template and send that out to your incoming students. I want to show you my favorite resource. I'm biased because it came out of my brain, but I really like it. It's our technology resource hub, or the tech hub. But what I realized as I started here is there was an assumption that every student already knew how to use technology, because students have phones in their hands all the time, right? That doesn't mean that they know how to right click, or they know how to drag, or they know how to copy and paste something. So this was born from like a 50-page Google Doc that I made of like notes and ideas. But we have now like full basic technology support in here. So we're talking about campus supports. We're also talking about Canvas supports. So some things that you can do to personalize your Canvas. You'll see that they're separated by campus-wide support. And then there's also faculty and staff support down here, where we talk about all of those courses that you could register for. So our Canvas Essentials, which is properly retitled here. And then our online accessibility course, which Lenora and I will talk in our next session more about. And then all of these things can be accessed. It's fully public. I hope and I encourage you, please share this with your students. Absolutely share this with your students, because all of this basic stuff in here is stuff that they frequently will email instructors, and somehow they find me and raise emails and also ask us. So I sort of made a list of things that I consistently get asked and built the course this way. So there's all this Microsoft support in here. There's technology basics. This is literally, how do I use my keyboard? How do I right click with a mouse or on a Mac? Screenshots, that one gets a lot of play. How do I do screenshots?
A lot.
How do I add an image to a doc? These are questions that came out of my own students, and I just built a page and said, here you go. And I don't have to answer the question in 50 emails anymore. I just send them to this website. The Zoom guide that used to exist in a Google Doc during the height of the pandemic now has been transitioned to this course and has all of the beginnings of how do I access Zoom, specifically for 4CD as well. How do I log in? All of that stuff is there. As well as Insight how-tos. And I always like to spend some time here, because when I first got hired as a part-timer, nobody told me how to do anything. I had no idea what I was doing. So I built this module based on the things I didn't know. And if there's other stuff in Insight, maybe that needs to be here, you can let me know. But how do you find your course details? Assigning it incomplete. I'll tell you, I asked 4 different deans and all 4 of them told me different ways to do it. So I found the right way to do it and I put it in there, because I figured I can't be the only one who doesn't know how to do this. So the whole process from student to dean is in the assigning it incomplete page here. We have a brand new faculty time entry time card upload system as of April. So there's all kinds of instructions in here on how to access that and what to do, as well as all of those beginning of semester, how do I message my students kinds of things, how do I find the list to email who's in my class. All of that is in the Tech Hub. And then of course you see this once a month in your inbox. This is our DEDE newsletter. This is the thing that I like to make really pretty and shiny, but I also make a plain text version so that I can have my fun. But this is where you're gonna see your announcements of what's new, what's updated, what's needed, requirements. I also like to keep a section on equity spotlight. So what's happening in digital equity? What can we share with you? And then, you know, in this particular case, this is the brand new one for the semester. So keep it up to date. I'm giving you reminders. Don't forget to update stuff. Digital Learning Lab. So Digital Learning Lab is our drop-in support this semester. And actually, I believe all year long, it's going to be Friday from 1 to 3 p.m. It's fully virtual. You can access the Digital Learning Lab using the link that's in the slides, but also once you've registered once, you always have the Zoom link. It's the same Zoom link. We just like to know what you're there for so we can keep our records, but if you need to just drop in, it's an emergency and you already have the Zoom link, drop in. We want to help you. Jessica Hughes is one of our part-time English instructors, and she is overseeing the DLL this year. So you can hang out with Jessica and see what she has to say about some of these items around online equity, accessibility, Canvas course design, and all of that jazz. And that is the end. And I know that we have a question and I want to make sure that I get to it. So all of these are linked in the slides. And all of these things are consistently shared out in my newsletter. This will also be shared out as a recording, as a slides presentation, pretty much anything. If you're like, I wonder where that resource was. If you go to the newsletter, it'll be there. So bookmark that newsletter and make sure that you access it regularly.
Also, every week I send out a DEDE email and I always link to the Canvas support hub, to the course support hub, and to the tech resources hub and the DLL. So
you just can't get enough of our resources. We have like 2 minutes left. If anybody has any quick questions, we are happy to answer them. Otherwise, we are gonna transition out so that the next session can transition in. Stop sharing. Let's see here. Jay says, student to student communication, I wanna have an all task form dedicated module at the top of our course.
Oh, I can't just.
Yeah, Jay, that is definitely something that you can do. Like a lot of people call that a student lounge, or, you know, they all have different names for it. I think Kelly Katie calls it a virtual village, which I just like the alliteration, but absolutely, you can do something like that for sure. If you're looking for links, I'm gonna put these in our emails that come out, so you can find them there. Go ahead, Jay.
Oh, sorry. I don't know how to do that to where students can actually start their own threads, but I was really honestly trying to figure it out on my own. So just wondering
Yeah,
who I should ask.
like, do you want them to be able to start their own discussion board, you mean?
No.
Yeah, like if there's a discussion board at the top of Canvas, they can start their own threads saying like, here's my question, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, I don't make it nearly as technical. I just let them drop whatever they have in the one discussion board. And it's just all one big party in there.
Yeah, same thing, Jay.
Thanks.
Yeah, I figure it doesn't hurt them to read everybody's quandaries or questions, or like, it always devolves into what movie did you watch, but that's fine. I like that.
Sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for coming. We're gonna log off so that we can get the next crowd in here. If you are going to be heading to our next session, that is our accessibility session on You Do It with Lenore and also myself, around our new accessibility technology. We will send an email with all of the information and recording shortly. Have a great rest of your day, y'all.